Okay, so our next artist is Giorgione, and this artwork is called The Tempest. Now, what we see here is a lush landscape and these stormy skies. There's lightning. You see that flash of lightning there? A tempest is a type of storm, so we can interpret the storm here is what we're talking about. See a woman who's nursing a baby, and then a man with a spear. Now, it's a really curious painting. It's very mysterious because you know what? We don't know what exactly is going on here. We don't know what the meaning is. We really don't know a lot about the artist. The artist is Giorgione. What we do know about Giorgione is that when he came to Venice, he established himself as a painter for the Nouveau Riche. What is that? The merchant class. He's not getting commissions from the nobility or any kind of large projects like public altarpieces. Instead, Giorgione is catering to the needs of the well-to-do in their homes. Stuff like this, The Tempest, these types of paintings would be displayed in the home, often accompanied by some song or poetry or maybe an essay. It's really discussion pieces, conversation starters. Now, sadly, we don't know what the conversation was for this painting. Like I said, what we see is a lush landscape, stormy skies, lightning, a woman nursing a baby, and a man holding a spear. So let's walk through this using our handy dandy tool of iconography. Iconography. All right. So if we were to start at the front, we see this dry creek bed, and on one side we see a man, on the other side we see a woman. This man here, he's holding what looks to be a pike. Is he part of the military, maybe? A soldier? Well, if we were alive in 1506, we would easily recognize him not as a soldier, but just as an everyday Venetian guy. All of you men in the room sitting at your laptops, this is how you would be dressing as you walked around Venice. Just a typical dude. You don't hold a spear. You don't hold a lance. You don't hold a pike. And what's curious is that we've done X-ray testing on this, and underpainting reveals that originally this had been a woman. So obviously Giorgione is deliberate in his choice of making a man, not a soldier, holding a soldier's weapon, a pike. Now he's looking across, remember we have to remember gesture, he's looking across this dry creek bed to a woman who is nursing. Now this is a young woman who is naked with a baby. You might think, oh, Virgin Mary, baby Jesus, but there are no other elements other than it's a woman nursing. That tell us that it's the Virgin Mary and baby Jesus. She's naked, but sitting on a piece of fabric, this white cloth that's draped over her, giving her a sense of modesty, perhaps. White in Western culture is often associated with purity. So we have a young woman, modest and pure, and she's breastfeeding. Well, in terms of iconography, breastfeeding is a symbol of charity. Charity, giving of oneself to another. Now let's go a little bit, cross over the bank, and here we have, it looks like a broken wall and some broken columns. In terms of iconography, broken columns are shorthand for a fallen civilization. Think about it. Man makes buildings, these buildings rise, empires rise, and empires crumble, empires fall, and so too do their buildings. So, here are columns symbolizing a fallen civilization. What civilization? I don't know. Let's continue. So we see a river, and that river, it's not feeding into this creek. However, there is a storm brewing. Is that river going to start to swell? Ooh. If we cross over the bridge, we see a very generic Mediterranean town or village. I say generic because there's nothing really characteristic of it. It's not like we can look at it and go like, oh, that looks like the church of blah, blah, blah in the city of blah, blah, blah. Instead, it's very basic, except, see that back there? What we historians think is going on is he's making a reference to a Byzantine church. Do you remember way back in the first few weeks of class when we were looking at Byzantine art? We talked about domes over these central planned churches. Those are very typical of the Byzantine world, the world that is now controlled by the Ottoman Turks. Oh, well, this is a war. The Venetians are constantly fighting for territory, and those territories would have those types of churches. Now let's think about what a storm represents. Storm brewing. Conflict? Is there some kind of a conflict happening here? Now, this is usually a time in class when I would ask you, what do you think what's going on? What do you think is the message here? I like this image because it shows you the size and scale. This is not a very big piece because it was originally meant for private viewing in a home. It might have been propped up on a table and you and your party guests would be standing around it talking about, is it a current event of the day? Is it discussing some kind of scandal or battle specific to this constant fight for territory? It's a really interesting piece because it offers so much. We just don't know how to read it. If it did have some accompanying poetry or essay or story behind it, it's been lost. But we can break it down and appreciate the characteristics of the Italian Renaissance. Yeah? Okay, let's do it. Atmospheric perspective? Yes. Linear perspective? Yes. We got it going on there. We got some linear perspective over here. Sure. Chiaroscuro? Yeah. We got some chiaroscuro. But let's pay attention to the light, the color. Oh, it's so tangible. It's like you can materialize the light as it plays across the surface here. It's hypnotic. Now, I hate to tell you this, but Giorgione, while he had a very promising career, he died fairly young from the plague. What? The plague? I know, in times of quarantine, this is quite real. Venice would have these bouts of plague that would wipe through the same Black Plague that we talked about in the Gothic. That one, it would come through because it's a trading town. It's got lots of import-export, lots of those rats with those infected fleas on them. So the plague would roll through, the rich would leave, and sadly, Giorgione, he died from the plague. Let's go on to his student, and we'll see how his legacy continues.